Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for teaching us the truth, and salutations to the sincere Akim and Aqua if they may listen. May the blessing of election be over your house. My name is Brother Okwai. I'm back in here with another lesson. And for today's lesson, I'm going to be going a little bit about Israelites in the Roman Empire, in the Roman life, and kind of touching more on the fact that, this so-called construct of race that, people constantly harp on, especially in the West today. These were all constructs that were recently created, and prior to the conception of America, these things did not exist, right? There wasn't a strong emphasis on so-called black people or so-called white people, right? So what I want to do, reading through this book here, the book I have with me in my hand, it's called this one is called Nature Knows No Color Line. And I'm just going to be reading a couple paragraphs, and Yahweh Rata said this would be an edifying lesson, right? So what I want to do is start with a brief introduction, right? So I'm just going to be jumping through a couple pages, so just bear with me. So here it says, slaves were employed at not only menial tasks as street cleaners, but as actors, tutors, secretaries, counselors, and physicians. According to occupations of Negroes named by Roman writers, there were actors, dancers, acrobats, soldiers, gladiators, priests of Isis. So that's, I think, one of the old Egyptian gods, right? So people were also going off on that. Um, Outriders, litter bearers, charioteers, bath attendants, cooks, waiters, domestics, divers, boot blacks, right, and so on and so forth. Human nature, what it is here, were undoubtedly animosities which had color of skin as an outward sign, but it could have not have been serious, since the upper classes, unlike those of Haiti, Venezuela, or the United States, did not encourage them. In Rome and in all the ancient world, a slave was a slave. In fact, the racial variety was so great that it was impossible to set off any one group, as in America, where white indentured servants was set against Negro one. The ancient Rome, a slave was valued according to his ability. In Roman literature, though abundant, had very little on color prejudice. Though Negroes were plentiful, in fact, the chief. Okay, let me just stop there. Right, so it's just going to it's just this passage is just explaining the fact that through Roman literature, and this one of the how do you call those people, like writers or poets, named Juvenal, who is well known for coining that term, bread and circus. There was very little evidence to show that so-called this construct of race, what we know as today in 2023, you know this did not exist back then. There wasn't this animosity between so-called black people or white people. They were very, very intermixed and mingled into society. Very multicultural is what the author is trying to put out, right? As a matter of fact, before I continue, let me just get a quick precept. Okay, so this is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 10, and it reads, "But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places. He shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is spoiled, and his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not." So, this just to expose a lot of the information of what Esau's been hiding, because these are the things that you don't learn in history books. When you commonly look at I guess, period pieces, whether it's from the Greek, the Roman, or even like the Medio Persian Empire. When you look at a lot of these pieces, you see them being depicted, poorly, because you don't actually see an accurate representation of the melanated people who are actually present during the time, right? So this is why I wanted to bring this out, and this is making Esau bare because he's showing something that is not true, right? Moving on is another part I just want to touch on as well. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so over here it also says again there is no record of any anti-Negro riot in Rome. Able Latin scholars as Snowden have been able to find none. It is safe to conclude that the great slave revolts, as under Spartacus, all are oppressed regardless of color, made common cause. Upper class whites and Negroes did the same. As in Greece, prejudice was the strongest amongst barbarians, regardless of color, right? So color wasn't a big issue as it, is commonly, you know, harped on and, made a big spectacle today. Let's see. So this is going more into Israelites who rose up the ranks essentially because they were common, even though they were slaves, Israelites as slaves, and people who were, entertainers, kind of like today how you have your so-called gladiators. So Israelites playing different sports, they're in acting, they're in music, and so on and so forth. On page 52, it reads, there is a good reason to believe that Negroes and near Negroes rose to be Roman emperors, and that's true, right? And there was something called the five great emperors, right? So I'm just gonna read, and then I want to touch on that a little bit. Indications of this are in surnames, which are often given to according to some physical characteristic. It is likely, therefore, that Roman families or descendants of them bearing the names generally given Negroes originated as such, right? So here it touches on surnames such as nigger or niger, right? So this is just going a little bit into the backstory of how some of these names came to be, right? Because another thing too that Esau is very good with words and weaponizes words, right? Because in slavery times, like talking back in the 1800s, that word was known as something very derogatory, right? So let me get another precept real quick. This is let's hold on. Okay, this is Psalm 64. I want to start at I'm going to start at 2, and it reads, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity, who whet their tongue like a sword and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words, right? So, this is something that a tactic that Esau is very, very good with. He's very, very clever with his words, right? So this is why it's important. I strongly, 100% agree with the apostles. This is the importance. It's always important to also look up words, right? So you don't get trapped up by, Esau's word magic, because a lot of people may not know this, but words even carry a vibration, right? So when people hear this word, such as niggard, our people get triggered, especially if it's an Edomite calling you that, right? So let me just read this. This is page 53. And it says Romans. The Romans took the name from the Greeks, who took it from the Africans. Later, more seem to have come into fashion. This too was an African word imported into Greek to describe black people. That is moros, black. The word Mauritania in Greek meant black, says Harper. Still later came Niger or nigger from the river of that name. It is likely that people from Negritia, which is present day Nigeria, brought that word into the language of the Romans, since they were a black skinned people. Originally, the Latin for black was ater, but later the term came interchangeable, right? So eventually, was a word that, that became associated with like I was reading earlier, with physical characteristics, right? And they also used, physical landmarks as well to actually describe, and that's how they came up with their last names, essentially, right? Let's see here. So this is more touching on let's see, on Israelites rising up the ranks in ancient Rome. And it says among Moors who rose to great power were emperors, um, Macrinus, Firmus, Emilianus, Lucius Quietus, foremost military figure of Trajan's reign, named by Trajan, and his successor was a Moor. Right? Let's see. Here, below here, it reads Trebius Niger or Niger was a proconsul in Spain and a naturalist mentioned by Pliny. A Niger was an authority in material medical and is mentioned by Gallo and Clay. Wow, just bear with me 1 second. Clay Callius Aurelianus, right? So these are different examples of different how do you call them, of emperors, right? And there's another point I wanted to touch on really quickly, because when you look at, let's open this picture real quick. So this is one of the emperors that is mentioned during this time, right? And I'm just going to go through images really quickly. Now, this is something I also wanted to bring out as well. When you actually pay attention to the way these emperors looked, right? This is one of the emperors that had this particular last name, so his name is Pesinius Niger or Nigger, right? And this person has a beard, right? So this is just going to show that, there was a difference between, Israel and, the other Caesars at the time, right? Because like when you look, for example, let's type in Vespasian, right? This is one of the 12 Caesars, or even let's go with Augustus. All these Caesars, you really look at them here, they don't have any beards on their faces. But then when you look at another one, I believe was Pertinax. He was one of the 5 great emperors. Salakia, just give me 1 second. You know, look at this, right? So this was a time period in time where Israelites were rising up in the ranks and they were taking over Rome, right? And let's go to Septimius as well. See, this is an image of how you would look, right? I think this is like one of those AI images, right? But they were also Israelite Jake emperors before Septimius, right? When you look into, let's just look at five great emperors. Oh, Marcus Aurelius is another one. When you look at them and you look at the bust, you notice that all of them had beards on their faces, right? So this is after the 12, right? And this is going into what we commonly known as the time of the Dark Ages, right? The medieval times. You see Marcus Aurelius, right? Anyways, this is something also you can look up as well. I know they're known as the five great emperors. So this is after I'm not sure who the first one is. I know there is how do you call this? There's Pertinax, there's Pesinius Niger, there is Aurelian as well. But you could just type that in, you can get some more information on that. But let's get another precept. Let's see. Oh, 13 and 4, Salakia. Okay, this is Job 13 verse 4, and it reads, "But ye are forgers of lies, you are physicians of no value," right? Because, when you look at a lot of these depictions on TV and these different period pieces in in movies, you would never ever see these kinds of images. And this is why I wanted to bring this out as well, right? This is very, very important to know because, when a lot of our young people look at these things and look at these movies, they think that, their history doesn't even, they think that their history does not go back as far as slavery. It just goes back, Salakia. They think that their history only goes back as far as slavery, and then there was nothing you did before that. But when you really look into these things and look at the accomplishments of you know Israelites, and whether it was the things that we did in Greece, in Rome, when you read about the Maccabees and so on and so forth, you'd realize that we're a great people. We're a talented people. This is another image of Septimius. So he came around in 193 AD, if I'm not mistaken. And this is a picture of him and his family. And they cut off the image here, but if you look below, that was his son, and his son was his name was Caracalla, if I'm not mistaken. And they all had beards. Apostle Tahar also brings that out. Look at this. Very different from when you look at the bust of Alexander, when you look at Augustus, when you look at Vespasian, or any of the 12 Caesars, Nero. You just look at them and compare and contrast, and you'll see it for yourself, right? It's amazing. But anyways, I didn't want to make the video too long, but how Ratazah, this video was edifying. And I just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone for teaching us his truth. Until next time, I say Shalom.